now we're going to do multiplication and division. It's exactly the same thing, except for instead of asking ourselves, is anything being added or subtracted from the variable, we're going to ask ourselves, is anything being multiplied or divided into the variable? We're still going to keep all the other steps the same. So we're going to take 5b equals 65. Okay, what are our steps? Step 1, Daniel.
Draw a line through the equal sign.
Draw a line through the equal sign. Why are we doing that?
So you could tell the difference between both sides.
So you can see that we're doing the same thing to both sides. You can clearly see that. Step 2.
Circle your variable.
Circle your variable. Our variable is v. Now we know where the cookie is. And we can see what's been happening to v. We've multiplied v by 5. Okay? So step 3.
Is there anything being multiplied or divided?
Yep, to the variable.
From the variable, yeah.
So is there any multiplication or division to the variable? In this case, we are multiplying the variable by 5. That's our answer. We're multiplied by 5. Step 4.
Since we're multiplying, you want to do the opposite, so you're going to divide by 5.
Yep, step 4 is do the opposite, do it on both sides.
Yep.
And you always want to keep the same rules, okay? So we're doing the opposite of multiplying by 5 is dividing by 5. We're going to do it on both sides. So 5 divided by 5, that should equal 1.
Just 1 y, which...
1, which shows that you've scraped off the right amount of ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That gives us v. And 65 divided by 5
13
is 13. Okay, now we know what the cookie is. The cookie happens to be an Oreo with the number 13 on it. So, okay, I'm going to do another one under here with division. Just keep that rolling, Daniel.
Okay.
Negative 9 equals h divided by negative 5. Okay, step 1, draw a line through the equal sign. Step 2, circle the variable. Step 3, what's happening to the variable? Is anything being multiplied or divided? Yes, it's being divided by negative 5. So what's the opposite of dividing by negative 5?
Multiplying by negative 5.
We're going to multiply.
But on both sides.
And we're going to multiply by negative 5, and we're going to do it on both sides. So in this case, I use parentheses for multiply to make it easy. And do you see how this is on both sides? You can clearly see we've done it on both sides. Okay? Go ahead, Dana.
You want to put this in fraction form for this, since it's like kind of like a fraction form right here.
Oh yeah, you can do that, or you can do that, or you can see negative 5 divided by negative 5. This equals 1. You scraped off the ice cream. That leaves h all by itself, the cookie, and we see negative 5 times negative 9. A negative times a negative is a positive, so it's positive 45. And to use the shortcut, a negative times a negative is a positive. Or a positive times a positive is a positive. Or a negative times a positive equals a negative. These are the multiplication and division.
Yeah, it's going.
Okay, so now we're going to try this problem, and we're going to use the same steps that we had before, but I'm going to do the steps in shorthand. So the shorthand is, I say, number 1 is draw a line through the equal sign. So if I had a test or a student on a test, they may want to write that down so they know, draw a line through the equal sign. Okay. Step 2, circle the variable. So in this case, the variable happens to be on the right side of the equal sign. So I'm going to circle it. Now that gives me an indication of what has been done to the cookie n in order to get negative 16. Okay, so step 3, I can see clearly, I have to ask myself, is anything added or subtracted to the variable? Okay, so let's look at this. our variable is n, 27 has been added. So our answer is yes, we have plus 27 being added to n, okay? Our fourth step is do the opposite and do it on both sides. So what's the opposite of adding 27? Subtracting 27. Right. So we're going to subtract 27 from both sides. Because we have our line down the equal sign, we can clearly see that we've done it on both sides. Okay. Now, our fifth step is to simplify. So this is the only time you'll actually do any kind of arithmetic where you're combining numbers. So in this case, let's see if we added or subtracted the right number. Remember, we're scraping off the ice cream, so this should end up to be 0. Is it true? 27 minus 27 does equal 0. So that ice cream is scraped off. All we have now is the cookie, n, okay? And on this side, we have negative 16 minus 27. So whenever I have negatives, I think of money. If I owe my mom $16 and now I owe her 27 more, I really owe my mom $43. So now I owe her 43, negative 43.
Or you could think of it as just adding two numbers together.
This is the same as a negative plus a negative equals a negative. A negative number plus a negative number equals a negative number. Or, as I always think of negatives as money, I'm in debt 16, now I'm in debt 27 more. I'm totally in debt $43.
Yep.
So that's our answer. So we draw a line through the equal sign, circle the variable. Ask yourself, are we adding or subtracting anything to the variable? Yeah, if yes, then you do the opposite and do it on both sides, and then go ahead and simplify. And that's it.
Okay.
So our other videos weren't working because they weren't being sent by iMessage, so we're going to make a different video. Okay, so what I always tell my students is that we have the problem on this side and we write the steps on this side. The steps will never change, and no matter when you go from one-step equations to two-step equations, you'll be able to use the same steps over and over. So I like to have them write them down because it helps them memorize what the steps are. So the first thing we look at is we have x plus 9 equals 14. So the first thing that we do is we draw a line through the equal sign. So I'm going to write that down. And the reason why we do that is because this is an equation. In an equation, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other to keep that equal meaningful. You want the equal sign to really be equal. If you did something to one side and not to the other, they wouldn't be equal anymore. It'd be like having children and you were giving out cookies. You want to give out one cookie to one kid and one cookie to the other so they still have the same amount. Okay, so the first step is draw a line through the equal sign. The second step is circle the variable. So in this case, our variable is x. And the reason why we want to circle the variable is because of our next step. If you don't have the variable circled, sometimes it's hard to tell whether you're supposed to do something with the 14 or the 9. But if you circle the variable, it makes it very clear what your next step is. So in solving an equation, I usually tell my students, at the bottom of a ice cream sundae bowl, you have a cookie, but you don't know what type of cookie it is. The same is up here. Your x is your cookie, your variable is. If you don't know, what you're trying to do is solve for what the solution, what x is, to make this equation true. But you can't tell what x is because we have added, just like this cookie, you add a bunch of ice cream, you add a bunch of chocolate sauce, you add a bunch of whipped cream, and you have a cherry. Well, you can't tell what the cookie is. That's the same thing with the, that's true of the variable, x. You can't tell what it is. So you have to scrape all this stuff off in order to get there. Well, that's why if you circle your x, you can see what exactly you need to scrape off, okay? So what's been done to your cookie is you've had 9 added to it. So the third step is you always ask yourself, is anything added or subtracted to the variable. And in this case, yes, 9 has been added. So this is what's happened. 9 has been added to the variable. So once you find out what's been added or subtracted to the variable, you need to do the opposite and do it on both sides. So we have this x has had 9 added to it. What's the opposite of opposite function besides adding 9? From adding 9, it's subtracting 9. So we're going to subtract 9, but we're going to do it on both sides. And that's what the line down the middle is, making sure that we're doing it on both sides. When I subtract 9 from both sides, it's kind of like taking off the ice cream. When you subtract 9 from both sides and you have this line down the middle, you can quickly check, yep, this is the cookie, it's added 9, I'm going to subtract 9, yep, I'm doing it on both sides. So it's a quick way to make sure you haven't skipped anything. Okay, so now we're going to bring down our variable, bring down our cookie, x. Negative 9 plus 9 goes to 0. See, we've scraped off that added 9. Then on this side, we have 14 subtracting 9 equals 5. So now we know what our solution is. When x is equal to 5, this equation is true. This equation is true. So that's it. So our fifth step that we did, I didn't really write it down, was simplifying. We added the negative 9 and subtracted the 9, and we subtracted 9 from 14. Okay, let's try another one.